Hey there everyone, and welcome to some more RPG horror stories that make you cringe with DnD Doge. In today's episode, we have a tale about a player that can't stand the idea of taking any damage, a story about a dungeon master that leads players on, and more. But before we get into those, a message from Lucky, the like and comment kitty. Isn't he cute? Y'all should listen to him. But with that said, let's get into these stories. Player freaked out over getting hit once, by Reddit user Duoplex19. One of the players in my campaign is insufferable to play with. His character is an edgy monk who wears a bunch of robes and stuff to cover his face, so we don't know what he looks like, and he doesn't roleplay because it's part of his character not to get along with others, and has no motivations or stakes in the world, nor any connections to any of the dozens of NPCs that I've presented. The player is an extreme power player, but doesn't know the system well enough to perform well enough that that's an issue. One session though, we had 4 encounters, and in the first 3, I didn't touch his character even once. I had used the darkness spell in one fight, and rather than look for an alternative strategy, he began raging at how he couldn't do anything. So I lied about the duration of it and made it expire the next turn. The next fight, it got to a point where I thought it would make a fun story and roleplay moment to hit him with something small as a joke. It did 4 points of damage to his 41 health. 4 points. He launched into a tantrum about how unfair the whole game was, and how he felt targeted by me, even though I had downed 2 other players in the very same session, and also complained about how bad the maps I made were. I spent 4 hours on them, and the other players thought they were nice. This was 4 weeks ago, and we haven't had a session since. I'm just over it. I would say that I agree with OP that player sounds like a nightmare. Getting so upset about being hit just once, and only taking 4 damage is an overreaction if I've ever heard one. I mean, it's D&D. You're going to take damage every now and then. What does he want? Invincibility? By the sounds of it, this one player is just bringing everything down, to the point that OP doesn't even want to run the game anymore. In which case, I'd just say boot the player. If everyone else is having a good time, just remove the element that causes that not to happen. Simple as that. Besides, the player just sounds like a dick. Let's move on. Player causes panic attack. Submitted to the DnD Doge subreddit by Reddit user Dark Flameth. Hey everyone. I've been listening to a lot of Crit Crab and DnD Doge on YouTube, and thought that I might post my story as well. Some things to note beforehand. Everyone in this game was my friend, and knew about my conditions, including the problem player. I have extreme social anxiety disorder, among other things, so my friends do take things cautiously with me, and I'm not sure if I wasn't also in the wrong in this, but that's up for people to decide themselves. So, to begin, I joined a group of my friends playing D&D on Roll20. We were using Discord as we were all from different countries, and understandably, this meant different time zones. Because I was the one on the other side of the world, I kinda suffered a little with the time, 4 to 5 AM start time. But they tried to accommodate for me, and started it later sometimes. This was only my second time playing, and before we started, it was usually asked how everyone was doing. In my case, not great. Between being sleepy, having an operation, and moving homes, but after it was all said and done, we go into the game. For the first 3 sessions, everything was great. We had me, the Goliath Barbarian, doing most of the damage and adding a lot of humor with carrying my group mates or making mud angels in the storms. We had my friends, a turtle cleric who spoke in proverbs a lot, a rabbit boy who never seemed to hit his spells well, I think he was a mage, and a frog that used some sort of tech suit that had flamethrowers. Then one day, The DM asked if one of our other friends from another online game could join us. We had no problem with this, and so the Catgirl Rogue was born. Now, this is where the trouble for me started, as she tended to talk over me a lot and was obsessed with gathering, even when we had no more room for food supplies, etc. I was not fond of the games lasting longer, as I was so tired and stressed, but I tried to handle it. However, it did cause me to zone out a lot, which I tried my best to make up for anytime I had realized I'd done it. Now, on to the end day. Like most days, we started with how our week had been, and I wasn't in the best of moods or health, as it was another 4 AM session, but once the game started, I put all that aside. We had been traveling 2 days in one direction, trying to get to a certain town, when the party comes across a lot of traps. After doing some checks on them, we found out that they belonged to a bunch of goblins that had a camp of some kind ahead. Now, the rogue chose to go by herself to check the camp, and found the goblins had built some sort of slingshot thing that was meant to relocate their town in case of trouble. I jokingly told her that she should cut the rope while they're all in there and watch them go flying. She yelled at me that I was not there, as we stayed back while she was far ahead scouting, and therefore should not say what to do. I went quiet because being yelled at causes me to shut down emotionally, so I just sat there listening. After a lot of checking things and chatting with the guys, one of them suggests the same thing I did, and she happily laughs and doesn't correct them that they also weren't there. She then cut the rope, and the village went flying 2 days backwards from where we came. She demanded that we go back to check if they had any loot, as it was confirmed that they would die from the impact. I was not pleased at the thought of wasted days and time, but I said nothing. At this point, I was falling asleep a bit, and I zoned out a few times when I heard them talking about a town. I thought to ask if the item I was after was there. When no one answered me, I asked the DM if I saw the item, at which point the rogue yelled at me that we weren't in the town yet. After this, I left the call, because I started having a panic attack from being yelled at so many times, and just needed to get it out of my system. When the DM asked if I will be coming back, I wasn't sure, and said I could not make such a choice while emotional. When I was finally starting to calm down, and thinking of going back, I get a message from the girl, saying that no one cared about my problems, and that she was so sick of hearing how hard things are for me, because she has her own problems and wants to leave them behind. Also, that me being tired is just an excuse, and if I'm going to zone out, then I have no reason to be playing. After this, I apologized to the DM and my party, but I couldn't go back, so I left the game for good. Me and the guys still hang out on other games, but I don't talk to her anymore. Well, I have to say that it's kinda messed up that the DM brought this person into a game that OP was already part of, only for said person to drive OP out due to being, for lack of a better term, a bitch. You would think that DM and the other players would maybe stick up for OP after that. It's obvious that she is targeting her aggression towards OP for some reason, and should be told to knock it the hell off. In this situation, I would let the DM know that you don't like the way that she talks to you, and if it doesn't stop, you go or she does. D&D is supposed to be enjoyable, and it's kinda hard to enjoy something when there is someone who is constantly snapping at you for no reason. Though, what are your thoughts? Let's move on. DM doesn't allow rolls out of combat and wants us to ride an invisible railroad. By Reddit user CG Bard Usually. The last time I shared a story here, it was from about 13 years ago. Here's one that's more recent, raw, fresh, and bloody. It's immaterial to the story, but I was playing a Grave Domain Cleric with the intention of taking Warlock as a multiclass. The idea being, her Cleric Goddess is her mom, and her Fiend Patron is her dad, and the two of them have a bickering divorced parents relationship dynamic. I recently left 2 campaigns that I did post here with the story how I left the other campaign. That was not a horror story though, so it does not belong in this subreddit. I just unfortunately couldn't attend the campaign anymore because of a dramatic change in my work schedule. This campaign, however, I left for multiple reasons, including the DM didn't allow rolls outside of combat, rendering our out-of-combat skills worthless. If we tried to roll outside of combat, it didn't matter what we rolled. She'd just decide that we failed anyway. Lazy writing. 500 to 1,000 bugbears being dropped on a level 4 party. Insanely strong magic items being rendered useless by Deus Ex Machina. The DM being actively aggressive towards me in real life because the players criticized her DMing. Originally, I was just really annoyed that the DM never called for a roll outside of combat. We would tell her what we wanted to do, and the DM would decide if we succeeded or failed, and narrate how she thought it would play out. Occasionally, we could force her into letting us roll, but only by stating, I would like to roll for X to do Y. Then she would grudgingly allow the roll, but based on our paladin's 29 persuasion roll, that resulted in him being ignored entirely when he asked to speak with a village elder. I don't think she ever had any intention of letting a silly thing like dice and character sheets get in the way of what she wanted to happen. There was also, in my opinion, a bad case of lazy writing. Our story started with our group being gifted a parcel of land by the king under a new program wherein adventurers were tasked with taming the land. You didn't have to pay taxes for the first year, but it was simple. You clear it, you keep it. Our parcel of land had the aforementioned village already on it, and the only way to get the villager to talk to us was by offering our services as adventurers to handle any possible threats to their village. What was the threat that we had to defend the village from? A stronghold of 500 bugbears. We were level 4. Through skirmishes with the bugbears, we learned that they were terrified of their leader. The bugbear king was ruthless and ruled with an iron fist. Anytime we captured a bugbear, they'd refuse to tell us anything, even under the threat of death, and even with the promise of reward if they turned coat. Eventually, we stopped trying. No matter what we offered them, they were too scared of their leader to give us any information or assistance. No matter how harshly we threatened them, it was the same thing. So, we spent multiple hours per day, in real life, planning and strategizing on how we were going to do this. In-game, we have our Tabaxi wizard, who had a cloak of invisibility because the DM showered us with ultra-powerful magic items, which you would think would be a good thing, but it really wasn't. He would sneak in and spy on the stronghold for several weeks, mapping it out and getting an accurate count of the bugbears. It turned out that the number was closer to 1,000 in the stronghold, and learning their sleep patterns, and the sleep patterns of their leader. You see, the DM had also given us a 9-live Stealer Sword, still level 4 by the way. The plan was to send the wizard in, invisible due to the cloak, and having him assassinate the leader in his sleep, sending the stronghold into disarray. Hence why we specified that we were spying daily over the course of multiple weeks. We knew this guy's schedule, so we put the plan into action. As the wizard invisibly stealths into the bugbear king's chambers in the dead of night, he wasn't in the bed. He's awake, and turns dramatically, looking at our invisible wizard.
"Bold of you to assume you can just walk into my private chambers,"
the leader says. Then our wizard is told to make a wisdom saving throw. He ultimately passes and dimension doors out, and that saving throw was the only roll. The DM has claimed that she rolled percentile and that there was a 5% chance that the leader would be awake. I don't believe it, and I don't believe it for one simple reason. The DM is my stepmom. I had previously enjoyed the game she ran, having played in her game since I was in high school. But this one, it's been a slog from the start, though I've never had these problems with her before. When we were putting together our plans outside of the session over Discord, she had said to me in real life, "So, I've been going over y'all's plans, and if it goes how you guys think it will, then it's definitely a good plan, and has a high chance of success. But I really don't think it's going to be as easy as Wizard thinks it will be." At the time, I took that to mean that the leader had some kind of protection against the 9 live Stealer special property, and that the leader's HP total was in excess of Wizard's max damage output. But I figured that we'd still be able to at least gravely injure the leader, which, if he was as feared and hated as we were led to believe, could still have the desired result. Unfortunately, that wasn't the case. Our plan was auto-failed from the beginning, and I think she tried to kill the wizard outright, with whatever spell caused the saving throw. Multiple players messaged me complaining about this. Our sessions were bi-weekly, and they had waited 2 weeks for this, spent hours of our lives in real life planning for this, and that was the session. An hour of prep for the assassination, a single saving throw, and then the Discord erupting into speculation about how the leader knew to be awake, could see through invisibility, and what the spell might have been, etc. It all just felt like a massive waste of time. The only person who ever got to do anything was Wizard, and all he got to do was one roll. The DM kept saying, "Come on guys, this has a solution. You can beat this," but gave us no hints, no guidance, no reminders of possible breadcrumbs that we might have overlooked. Absolutely nothing. So, I organized a meeting with the players and her to bring forth our concerns. Without a clear path to follow, we should have agency, but anytime we tried to exercise that agency, we were slapped down without even getting a roll most of the times. The scenario with the Bugbear King wasn't the first time something like that happened, just the worst example. The players seemed happy. They said that she seemed to take it well and wanted to improve the sessions for everyone, though that was the impression that they got. What I got was screamed at in real life. She accused me of trying to turn the players against her, lying about how I was running the technical aspects of an online game, as she has little to no tech ability on her own, and trash-talking her to the other players. At that point, I said enough was enough. I just couldn't play in her game anymore. It wasn't fun. I had no agency. And now she was screaming at me in real life because her players tried to help her make the game more fun for everyone. I sent a message to the Discord saying that I was stepping out of the campaign due to my changing work schedule. She had previously talked about wanting to change the date and time to accommodate me, but at this point, I didn't even want to let her try. I just didn't want to play anymore. That definitely sounds like that was a slog to get through. Then for all the planning to go up in flames like it did, without any other rolls aside from the wisdom save, I'd feel a tad cheated too. But then, when you all bring up the issues to her, and then for her to act all friendly with the other players, but then blow up on you in private, really isn't okay. Which sucks, because in the comments, OP states that their stepmom has been around since OP was 6, and is like their real mom. OP did say that their stepmom has been dealing with some major stuff, and that could be part of it, but it's never okay to take things out on people that have nothing to do with it. Thankfully, OP also stated that they suggested going to therapy together to try to repair things, so hopefully that goes well. It would be stupid for a relationship of that nature to be ruined over a game of D&D, and I hope it all ends up working out for them. But that is all the time we have for today. As always, I appreciate all of you, and may your games remain horror story free. Until next time.